It started on a quiet Saturday morning, the kind of morning that pretends to be peaceful until something breaks it. The air was warm, still carrying that smell of rain from the night before. My neighborhood had that usual silence broken only by the sound of sprinklers and someone's dog barking behind a white picket fence. I had just stepped out to check the mailbox. My boots left small prints in the wet driveway, and from the corner of my eye I saw her again, Karen. She stood across the street like a warden inspecting her prison yard, arms crossed, clipboard in hand, and that fake smile she saved for her next victim. For months, she'd been the self-proclaimed enforcer of our HOA, always looking for something, paint too faded, lawn too long, mailbox not shiny enough. I'd learned to ignore her, but that morning, she wasn't looking at me. She was staring at my daughter. Was 12, a quiet kid always humming when she drew. She was born with mild cerebral palsy and walking on uneven ground wasn't easy for her, but she never asked for help. She learned to move with grace that made you forget she struggled at all. That morning, she was trying to put a small flower pot near the porch steps, a gift she'd made for her mother. I remember calling out, "Careful, sweetheart, don't lean too far." She smiled, "I got it, Baba." But before I could take another breath, Karen's voice cut through the air. "That pot isn't HOA approved. You can't place decor outside the railing." At first, I thought I misheard, but she marched right over, her heels tapping hard on the pavement like she owned the place. I walked down the driveway, my hands still stained from the engine oil I'd been working with. "Karen, it's just a flower pot, she's—" "I don't care," she snapped, voice sharp enough to slice through the morning calm. "Rules are rules. We can't make exceptions just because someone has conditions." That word conditions, it made my chest tighten. I saw a smile fade, her hand slipping slightly on the railing. "Karen, please," I said, forcing my voice calm. "She worked hard on it, we'll move it later." But she didn't stop. She stepped closer, reaching for the pot as if she had authority over my own porch. And in that second, everything changed. Tried to move back, startled, her balance faltered, and her foot caught the edge of the step. I saw it happen in slow motion. The pot shattered first. Then came the sound I'll never forget, the dull, heavy thud of my daughter's small body hitting the concrete. The silence that followed was worse than the sound itself. Karen froze, her mouth open, eyes wide. "Oh my God," she whispered, but her hands stayed clean, untouched, like she'd done nothing wrong. I ran to, her body trembled, her face pale as paper. "It hurts," she kept saying. "Baba, my back hurts." My voice cracked when I yelled for help. Neighbors came running, phones in hand, eyes full of confusion and pity. Someone called an ambulance. Karen just stood there, repeating, "It was an accident, I didn't mean to." The ambulance arrived with flashing red lights that painted the white fences like crime scene tape. The paramedics lifted my daughter gently, asking questions I could barely answer. All I could do was watch her hand slip from mine as they closed the doors. That night the doctor's words sliced through me. "A spinal fracture, we'll need to operate, it's serious." I sat in that cold hospital corridor, head in my hands, trying to breathe. My wife wept quietly beside me. Karen had filed a report too, claiming had lost her balance while violating HOA regulations. That line, while violating HOA regulations. It was like she turned my daughter's pain into paperwork. For the first time in years, something in me broke. I'd built a life keeping my temper in check, staying low profile. No one in that neighborhood knew who I really was or what I used to do. But that night, as I looked at my daughter lying still under those hospital lights, I realized something. People like Karen only understand one kind of justice. And for the first time, I wasn't just a father. I was the assistant commissioner who'd been silent too long. And the silence was about to end. The hospital lights never dimmed that night. They just buzzed softly, casting a pale glow over everything. The hallway tiles, the faded notice board, the untouched coffee in my hand. Every sound felt too loud. The squeak of a nurse's shoes, the distant beeping from another room, even the hum of the air conditioner. Everything reminded me that my daughter was lying in a bed somewhere down that hall, her spine wrapped in medical uncertainty. I'd always thought I understood pain. In my years on the force, I'd seen families lose everything, fathers burying sons, mothers screaming at the world. But nothing prepares you for the quiet kind of pain, the one that doesn't scream, it just sits there, heavy, steady, and unrelenting. When the surgeon came out, I didn't move at first. His face told me before his words did it was bad. "She'll need months of rehabilitation," he said gently. "The fracture's near the lumbar region. She's young, that's in her favor, but recovery will take time." He kept talking, but my mind had already drifted away. Because behind his voice, I could still hear Karen. That smug, trembling voice that said, "It was an accident." Accident. A word too small for what she took from us. My wife sat beside me, her hands clenched in her lap. "She just wanted to put a flower on the porch," she whispered. I nodded slowly. "I know." The next morning, I drove back home. Not because I wanted to, but because I had to. The police report needed to be filed, evidence preserved. That's what procedure demanded, and though no one here knew it, procedure had always been my language. As I walked up the driveway, I noticed the stain on the concrete, the faint outline where it had fallen. The flower pot pieces were gone, swept away. The HOA had probably cleaned up for safety reasons. They were efficient that way, fixing appearances before fixing people. And there she was again. Karen, standing near her SUV, talking to two of her little committee friends, laughing softly like nothing had happened. When she saw me, her smile faltered just a bit. "Mister," she said, her tone rehearsed, "I'm so sorry about your daughter, truly. I've already sent an email to the HOA board. We'll cover her medical bills partially if it's proven." "If it's proven," I repeated. Her lips twitched. "Well, you know, the board has to review the footage and—" I took a step closer. "There's footage." She blinked. "Of course, the security cameras near the gate caught part of it, but the HOA owns the system and access is restricted." Her eyes gave her away. She wasn't nervous because she cared, she was nervous because she'd already been there. Maybe she'd seen the footage, maybe she'd deleted it. I forced myself to stay calm. I'd worn that calm before in interrogation rooms, during raids, during funerals. It wasn't peace, it was focus. "That footage," I said quietly, "might show who reached for that pot first." Karen's smile returned, brittle and polite. "We'll see what the board says." Then she turned, clicking her heels on the pavement like the conversation was over. But it was not for me. That evening, I called in a favor. Not an official one, just a message to a friend still serving in the city's cyber division. A quiet man who owed me more than one favor from our years together. "Send me everything you can find about the HOA," I said, "especially security systems and board contacts." He hesitated. "You sure you want to mix your name in this? You're still under department status, if this goes wrong." "It already went wrong," I cut in. By midnight, I had an email sitting in my inbox. Encrypted files, board member names, payment trails. And there it was, a single invoice from 6 months ago. Security system maintenance, approved by Karen, acting HOA president. It wasn't a company name I recognized, not an official contractor, a private vendor barely registered, probably someone she hired off the books to maintain control of the footage. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the dimly lit room. My daughter's crutches leaned against the wall now, waiting for a body that might never walk the same again. That's when I realized something. This wasn't about a flower pot, it wasn't about rules. It was about power, the kind that hides behind paperwork and titles. For people like Karen, the HOA wasn't a community, it was a kingdom, and she was the queen of petty control. But she had no idea who she'd picked a fight with. The next morning, I visited the HOA office. A small building near the main gate, with frosted glass windows and the faint smell of air freshener trying to cover mold. Inside sat a young clerk, nervously flipping through forms. I flashed an old ID, not my current badge. but one with enough authority to make him stand a little. "I need the footage from last Saturday," I said. He stammered, "Sir, I can't release that without Ms. permission." I nodded slowly, "Then call her." He did. I could hear her voice through the tiny speaker, sharp, annoyed. "Who's asking?" The clerk glanced at me. I stayed silent. After a pause, she said, "Tell whoever it is that the footage was corrupted during the last update. There's nothing to give." I smiled faintly. Corrupted, that was quick. As I walked out, I looked up at the camera mounted on the corner of the building. A tiny red light blinked, still recording, still alive. The truth always leaves traces, even when people try to bury it. That evening I sat beside my daughter's hospital bed. She was awake now, her eyes half open, tired but strong. "Baba," she whispered, "did the flowers break?" I felt my throat tighten. "They did." She smiled faintly. "It's okay, maybe I'll paint new ones when I get better." That one sentence, that hope in her voice, it anchored me. It reminded me who I was fighting for. So I kissed her forehead, whispered a prayer, and left quietly. Outside, under the flickering hospital streetlight, I made a call. My tone was calm, too calm. "Access every backup of security feeds. Night before, morning after. I want every second." The man on the other end didn't ask why. He just said, "Understood." As I hung up, I looked toward the dark sky, feeling the weight of quiet rage settle in my chest. Because when you've spent years serving justice by the book, you learn something important. Sometimes the book protects the guilty. But not this time. 3 days passed before my contact called back. I was standing outside the hospital cafeteria when my phone buzzed. That familiar vibration that used to mean trouble on the line. "Got something," he said. "Feeds are cloud-linked, not local. Karen doesn't know that. The footage you want, I've got it." For a second, I couldn't breathe. "Send it." When the file arrived, I locked myself in the car. The video opened on my phone, grainy but clear enough. The timestamp, 9:37 a.m. Saturday. There was my daughter on the porch steps holding that small blue flower pot, her smile, her focus. Then Karen walked into the frame, clipboard under her arm. The argument began, no audio, but I could read the body language. Karen pointed sharply toward the pot, then my daughter hesitated, shook her head. Then Karen stepped forward, a quick, sudden grab. I watched the exact moment it happened, recoiling, losing her balance, falling back. Karen flinched, then froze, didn't move, didn't call for help, just looked around and then turned away. She walked off while my daughter lay motionless. That image, it burned itself into me. I replayed it again and again, each time feeling something deeper, colder settle in my chest. People like her, they hide behind words like accident. But when you see it, when you see the moment your child's life breaks because someone wanted control, the word loses all meaning. I drove straight to the precinct that night. My badge still carried quiet authority there. The young officers at the front desk didn't know my full title, they just knew to stand when I entered. "Sir," one said, "how can we help you?" "I'm here to file an amended statement," I said, handing over the flash drive. "Victim, my daughter, suspect, HOA President Karen." The officer frowned. "HOA, as in Homeowners Association." "Yes," I said, "but you'll see why this one's different." He plugged it in. Within seconds, his face changed. His brows furrowed, lips pressed together. "Sir, this is clear evidence of negligence." I nodded. "More than negligence. She interfered, then tampered with evidence. The HOA declared the footage corrupted." He exhaled. "That's obstruction." "Exactly," I said. "File it under assault causing grievous injury and obstruction of justice." He nodded, typing fast. The sound of the keyboard was strangely comforting, the rhythm of accountability beginning. By morning, Karen would receive her first official notice. But things didn't go quietly. That evening, as I returned home from the hospital, I noticed my mailbox open, papers scattered on the curb. Someone had it with a tool. HOA notices lay half buried in the dirt, violation warnings, late fees, threats of property liens, all dated after the accident. They were trying to push us out. I laughed quietly to myself. Wrong move, Karen. The next HOA board meeting was scheduled for Thursday night. Residents gathered in the community hall, plastic chairs, stale air, the faint buzz of fluorescent lights. I arrived late on purpose. When I entered, every head turned. Karen sat at the front table, pretending not to notice me. Her lipstick was perfect, her papers neatly stacked. Next on the agenda, she began, property maintenance noncompliance at lot 42. That's mine, I said, walking up slowly. Her eyes flickered. Mister, this isn't the time. I placed a small flash drive on the table. It's time enough. What is that? She asked. Proof, I said softly. The murmurs in the room grew louder. A few neighbors shifted uncomfortably. Karen glanced at her board members, two of whom suddenly found their papers very interesting. Let's maintain decorum, she said. This isn't a courtroom. No, I replied, but soon it will be. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't have to. The calm in it was louder than any shout. Then I told them every detail, how she'd confronted my daughter, how the footage had been hidden, how she had lied in her statement. And when I ended, the room was silent. Karen's face had lost its color. Her fingers tapped nervously against the table. That footage is inadmissible, she snapped suddenly. It was obtained illegally. By whom? I asked. By the same person who corrupted it. The neighbors began whispering. Some angry, some afraid. Someone muttered, "She went too far this time." Karen stood abruptly, clutching her clipboard like a shield. You're making baseless accusations. Then you won't mind if the police verify them. She froze, her lips parted, but no words came. The following morning, officers arrived at the HOA office with a warrant for the CCTV server. Karen was there, trying to act surprised. But I'd seen that look before, the kind guilty people wear when they think charm can outtalk evidence. They found the hard drives hidden in a drawer under her desk. 2 had been reformatted, 1 hadn't. It still held fragments of the same footage, enough to prove tampering. When she realized they had it, she lost the mask. You can't do this. I'm the HOA president. I make the rules here. I watched quietly from across the street. She didn't know I was there. Didn't know I'd already filed the internal affidavit under my own department clearance. She wasn't just facing HOA complaints now. She was facing criminal charges. That night I sat again beside my daughter. She was sleeping, her hand resting on her chest, slow and steady. My wife looked at me, eyes tired but hopeful for the first time in weeks. Is it over? She asked. I shook my head softly, almost. Because justice, I knew, wasn't just about punishment. It was about truth and making sure no one else's child would ever have to suffer for someone's ego. The next day, news spread across the community. People whispered in driveways, texted in private chats, deleted old messages. The perfect little HOA kingdom was cracking. A neighbor I barely knew came to my door. Sir, I saw what happened that day. I didn't speak up because she threatened to fine me for my garden fence. I'm sorry. I looked at him for a long moment, then said quietly, Don't be sorry, just tell the truth. And he did, so did 2 others. By the end of the week, the HOA board had called an emergency election. Karen had resigned for personal reasons. But something about it felt too clean, too quick. People like her don't disappear quietly. They hide, they wait. And somewhere deep inside, I knew she wasn't done yet. For a few weeks, the neighborhood felt different. Quieter, softer. People smiled again when they passed by. Someone even brought flowers for yellow lilies with a small card that read, For the bravest girl on the street. I thought maybe, just maybe, it was over. But peace never lasts long when guilt still breathes. It started with little things. A broken mailbox again, only this time not open but smashed. Garbage scattered across my lawn every morning. HOA notices still showing up, even though Karen had resigned. At first, I ignored them. I had bigger things to worry about, hospital bills, therapy schedules. the fragile routine of helping my daughter learn how to sit upright without crying. But then one night, around 2 a.m., my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. "How's your daughter walking these days?" My heart stopped. For a second, I stared at the screen, feeling that old familiar chill, the one you get before a storm. I didn't reply, didn't need to. The intent was clear. By morning, I had security cameras installed around the house, my own independent ones, not the HOA. The irony made me smile bitterly. 2 days later, I caught her. Karen, standing just beyond my fence, wearing a hoodie, her face half hidden, staring at my porch. When she saw the small red light of the camera blink, she turned and walked away quickly. She wasn't done, she was haunting us. That evening, as I left for the hospital, my wife stopped me at the door. "She's afraid of you now," she said. "That's why she's doing this, to make you react." I nodded. She should be afraid, but I'm not going to react, not yet. Because reacting is emotion. But what I was planning wasn't emotional. 2 weeks later, an article appeared online. Assistant Commissioner abuses authority to harass HOA volunteer. My picture was there, cropped from a public event years ago. My name, my rank, my department. Every detail. The leak was intentional. Only a handful of people knew both my identity and my address. Karen was one of them. I read the comments section. Strangers debating my life, my motives, my daughter's injury as if it were some online drama. Maybe he's exaggerating. Sounds like a setup. These cops think they're above the law. It was a new kind of pain, the digital kind. You can't punch it, can't silence it. It just sits there, eroding your name bit by bit. That night, I sat alone in the dark living room, the glow of the screen reflecting off the walls. I didn't speak, I just thought. About every person I'd ever investigated, every criminal who'd smiled in my face while hiding their rot. Karen had learned from them, the way they twist the truth, bury it under charm. So I decided to remind her who she was dealing with. The next morning, I called my friend again in cyber. "I need a trace," I said. "Anonymous source posted an article. Find the IP, origin, and connection history." He sighed. "You're making this personal." It already is. Within hours, I had the data. The article came from a small PR firm in another city, one Karen's brother owned. A paper trail. Transfer payments, fake invoices, an entire smear campaign disguised as community awareness. I smiled quietly. "Got you." That evening, I went to see her. She was sitting on her porch when I arrived, perfectly calm, sipping coffee like a woman without a care in the world. "Still trying to control the neighborhood?" I asked. She looked up, pretending surprise. "Oh, it's you. Shouldn't you be at work, Commissioner?" The way she said my title, it dripped with mockery. She wanted me angry. "I just came to return something," I said, handing her an envelope. She opened it. Inside were printouts, her brother's company registration, the payments linked to the article, and the digital trace showing her home IP address as the upload source. Her smirk vanished. "Harassment, cyber defamation, and falsifying public information," I said quietly. "That's 3 more counts on your record, Karen." "You wouldn't dare." I leaned closer. "You dared first." For a moment I saw fear flicker in her eyes, but then she smiled again, that same hollow smile that hides panic behind pride. "Do you really think you'll win? This neighborhood listens to me, not you." I looked around at the houses, the windows glowing faintly in the evening light. "Not anymore," I said. "They saw the truth." She laughed softly. "Truth, people believe what they're told, not what they see." Her words stayed with me long after I left, because she wasn't wrong. Power doesn't always come from evidence, it comes from narrative. And she still had one weapon left, fear. 2 nights later, someone spray-painted the word corrupt on my front gate. The next morning, another letter arrived, unsigned but typed. "Step down or your past will destroy you." I read it twice, folded it neatly, burned it in the sink. Because I knew what was coming. She was digging, trying to find anything, any mistake, any file, any decision from my career she could twist. That's what people like her do when cornered. They go for your reputation when they can't touch your conscience. But I'd already decided. This wasn't just about her anymore. It was about every person who thought rules were made to hurt, not help. So I called a press conference, quiet, unannounced. No fancy stage. Just me, standing outside the same hospital where my daughter was still learning to sit again. And I told the story, every word. The footage, the cover-up, the threats. I didn't mention her name, but everyone knew. And I ended with one line that wasn't rehearsed. Justice isn't revenge, it's balance, and I intend to restore it. The microphones fell silent. The story spread again, but this time differently. People began asking why an HOA president was under investigation. Why her name had vanished from records. Why the local police were raiding an HOA office for the second time in a month. Karen didn't appear in public after that. Her house lights stayed off. Mail piled up. But I knew it wasn't over. Because people like her never accept silence as defeat. They wait for darkness to make their next move. And somewhere deep inside, I was waiting too. The night it all came apart didn't start with noise. It started with silence. That uneasy kind of silence that hums beneath the skin, the kind you feel before thunder strikes. Had just fallen asleep after her evening therapy session. The house smelled faintly of antiseptic and warm soup. My wife was folding laundry in the next room, and I was on the porch, staring at the same cracked step where everything began. I remember thinking how strange it was, how 1 inch of concrete could hold so much pain. The gate creaked softly in the wind. Somewhere down the street a dog barked, then went quiet, and then I saw headlights. A black SUV stopped at the corner, engine running but lights off. It didn't move for a long time. My instincts kicked in before logic did. I slipped inside, turned off the porch light, and watched through the blinds. The SUV door opened. A figure stepped out, a woman tall, wearing a coat. Even from a distance, I knew. Karen. She walked slowly, her hands buried in her pockets. Not toward my door, toward my fence. Then came the sound, a faint clink, metal against metal. She was doing something to the latch. I opened the door quietly and stepped out. The air was cold enough to sting. Karen. She froze. For a moment she didn't turn around. Then she did slowly, eyes wide but unashamed. I just came to talk, she said. I took a few steps closer, at midnight. She shrugged, her voice calm but trembling underneath. You've ruined my life. You lied about me. Everyone thinks I'm a monster. You pushed a child, I said. The footage doesn't lie. Her eyes glinted in the dim streetlight. It was an accident. I shook my head. You keep saying that word like it'll save you. She took a step closer to the fence. Do you think this makes you a hero? You used your position, you used your badge to destroy me. I stayed silent. She laughed bitterly. You think you're better than me because you have authority, because you wear that title? You're just like me, controlling, arrogant. You just hide behind your badge while I had the courage to admit it. Something in her voice cracked then, a kind of madness that comes when pride and fear mix too long. I lost everything because of you, she said, her voice shaking now. My job, my home, my reputation. You did that yourself. Her eyes darted toward the house. And your daughter, she whispered. How is she, still pretending she's broken to make you look like the victim? I don't remember crossing the distance. 1 second I was behind the fence. The next I was in front of her, hand gripping the collar of her coat. She gasped. See, she hissed. You are like me. For a second I almost believed her. But then I let go, stepping back slowly. No, I said. The difference is I stop before someone gets hurt. She stumbled backward, her eyes full of hate and something else, something close to fear. Leave this neighborhood, I said quietly, tonight. She didn't move. Before I forget, I'm supposed to be the good one. That broke her. She turned, stormed toward the SUV, slammed the door, and drove off into the dark. For the first time in weeks, I thought it was over. I was wrong. 2 nights later, the fire started. It was around 3 a.m. when my wife shook me awake, coughing. The air smelled of smoke. I ran to the window, orange light flickered outside. The front yard was on fire. The mailbox, the fence, the bushes, all burning. I grabbed the extinguisher, shouted for my wife to call 911. Neighbors rushed out with hoses, shouting, panicking. The flames roared, licking up the wood panels. I sprayed until my arms shook, until the hiss drowned out every sound in my head. When it was finally over, the damage wasn't huge, just the gate and the mailbox. But the message was clear. Spray painted across what was left of the fence, half-burned but legible, were the words, "This isn't over." The police came, took statements, collected what was left of a plastic fuel can from the grass. "Arson attempt," they said, "probably personal." I didn't tell them my suspicions, not yet. The next morning, as I sat outside the house staring at the ashes, a small voice came from behind me. "Baba." It was standing with her crutch. Her hair was messy, her eyes still sleepy. "Is someone trying to hurt us?" she asked. I smiled faintly, forcing calm. "No, just a mistake, they'll fix it." She nodded slowly. "You always say that." She went back inside, and I sat there, staring at the smoke curling into the dawn. She was right. I always said things would fix themselves. But sometimes they only fix when you stop waiting. By evening, the officers confirmed what I already knew. The fingerprints on the fuel can were partial, but matched a vehicle owned by Karen. They couldn't make an arrest yet, not enough for a conviction, but enough for a visit. So I made one. When I reached her house, it looked abandoned, overgrown grass, mail stacked by the door. But her car was there. I knocked once, no answer. Then again, harder. Finally, the door opened a crack. Karen stood there, pale, unkempt, eyes bloodshot. "What do you want?" she rasped. "An end to this," I said. "You're crossing lines you can't come back from." She laughed weakly. "You think I care anymore?" Her voice broke halfway through the sentence. "You took everything from me, so I'll take everything from you." Her hand twitched. For a second I thought she was reaching for something, a weapon maybe, but she didn't. She just slammed the door in my face. I stood there for a long moment, breathing hard. The house was silent again. No lights, no movement, just the faint hum of the refrigerator inside and the echo of her words in my head. "I'll take everything from you." As I walked back to the car, I glanced once more at her window. The curtain moved, just slightly. Somewhere inside that house, a broken woman was plotting her last move. And I knew, before this ended, one of us would finally learn what justice really costs. 3 days passed after that night at Karen's door. 3 days of quiet. No calls, no letters, no fire. But sometimes silence isn't peace, it's pressure. And I could feel it building, deep in my chest, every time the wind touched the burned edge of the fence. I kept my uniform folded in the closet, untouched. For the first time in years, I didn't want to look like authority. I just wanted to look like a father, a man trying to protect his family from something ugly and senseless. But the world doesn't care what you want when someone else wants revenge. It was Friday morning when the first sign came. A package. No return label, no sender. My wife found it at the gate when she went to water the plants. I was inside, helping adjust her crutch strap when I heard her shout my name. The box was small, plain cardboard, taped unevenly. My first thought was that it was from the HOA, maybe another notice. But the handwriting on top wasn't theirs. It just said in shaky letters, "You forgot something." I opened it carefully. Inside there was a single item. A photograph. It was of my daughter, taken from outside the school fence. She was smiling, waving at someone off camera. And written in red marker at the bottom, "Pretty house, weak locks." My wife dropped the watering can. It hit the tiles with a metallic thud that seemed to echo through every room. That was the first time I saw real fear in her eyes. Not anger, not frustration, fear. I took her hand. "She's bluffing," I said, but I didn't believe it. That night I couldn't sleep. Every sound in the house felt louder, the hum of the fridge, the ceiling fan's wobble, the faint tapping of a branch against the window. My mind replayed the photograph over and over, the angle, the distance, the time of day. Whoever took it had been close. Too close. Around 2 a.m., I heard something outside. A scrape, then another. I got up, grabbed the flashlight, and walked to the back door. The motion light flicked on, but no one was there. Only footprints in the damp soil, barefoot, small, fresh. I called the local precinct. A patrol car came, did a sweep, found nothing. "Probably kids," the officer said. I looked at him, young, polite, nervous, and said nothing. Kids don't leave footprints like that. Adults running in panic do. The next morning, I decided I'd had enough. I called my friend in the department, an old colleague from my early years, told him everything. The fire, the threats, the photo. He came over by noon, looked around, and nodded slowly. "She's spiraling," he said. "She's not thinking straight. This kind of behavior usually ends one of two ways." "How that?" I asked. He looked at me quietly. "Either she does something stupid, or she does something final." I wanted to believe it was the first, but that night proved me wrong. It started with a call. A number I didn't recognize. I almost didn't answer. But something made me pick up. There was static first, then breathing. And then her voice, low, shaking, hollow. "You win," Karen said. My stomach tightened. "Karen, where are you?" "I just wanted you to feel it," she whispered. "The fear, the helplessness, now you know." Her words came slowly, like she was running out of strength. I didn't mean to hurt her. I just wanted her to move her bike. It was an accident, I swear. I said nothing. You know what they did to me after that? The HOA kicked me out. My husband left. My friends stopped answering my calls. I became a ghost in my own neighborhood. She let out a shaky laugh. "You wanted justice? You got it. I've lost everything. Are you happy now, Commissioner?" I closed my eyes. Karen, listened to me. But the line clicked dead. I tried calling back, no answer. Again and again. Something about her tone, it didn't sound like anger anymore. It sounded like goodbye. I drove to her house within minutes. The streets were empty, most of the neighborhood asleep. The porch light at her place was still on, flickering faintly. Her car was parked crooked in the driveway, door half open. When I knocked, no answer. I pushed the door gently, it creaked open. The smell hit first, burnt plastic and something sharp, metallic. I called her name, Karen. No response. The living room was a mess, bottles, papers, broken glass. Photos of her old life scattered on the floor, her husband, their kids, HOA meetings, smiles that didn't belong to this version of her anymore. Then I heard it faint, coming from the back room. I followed the sound, slow, careful. It was a phone buzzing on the floor beside a couch, and beside it, Karen. She was sitting there, head down, eyes red, clutching a half-empty bottle of pills. When she saw me, she didn't flinch, she just stared. "I thought you'd send the police," she said weakly. "Didn't expect you to come yourself." I stepped forward carefully. "Karen, we can fix this, put that down." She smiled, a strange kind of peace in her eyes. "You already did, you fixed everything, you made sure everyone saw the truth." Her voice trembled as she looked away. "But you forgot something, people like me don't survive truth." Before I could move, she collapsed. I rushed forward, shouting for help, grabbing her wrist, pulse faint but there. I called dispatch, gave the address, started CPR. The paramedics came fast. They took her, unconscious but breathing. As the ambulance drove off, I stood in her doorway, surrounded by the ruins of her pride. The walls were lined with plaques, HOA President of the Year, Community Excellence Award, all cracked, all meaningless. For the first time, I didn't feel anger. I felt something heavier, pity. Because somewhere between justice and vengeance, I had forgotten that broken people don't always deserve punishment. Sometimes they just need saving before it's too late. But I was too late. The next morning I got the call. Karen was in critical condition. And with her gone, so was every chance for closure. When you win a war, no one tells you how quiet the battlefield feels afterward. It's been 2 weeks since that night, since the ambulance lights faded into the dark, leaving me standing alone in the middle of her broken living room. Karen never woke up again. She slipped into a coma and passed 3 days later. The news ran with it for a week. HOA president dies after arson attempt linked to neighborhood feud. They called it a tragedy rooted in suburban conflict. No one knew the full story, only fragments whispered versions. But inside this house, we knew every line of it, and every silence between those lines. His recovery had started to show signs of real progress. She was standing for longer now, trying small steps between the rails. But her laughter, that easy, childish laughter she used to fill the air with, it was gone. Every time she saw the scar on her leg, she looked away. And every time she caught me watching her, I looked away too. Because deep down, she knew the fire, the police cars, the reporters, all of it came from one spark. That fall, that push, that single argument over nothing. The day after Karen's death, a detective came by. He was polite, professional, and cautious. He asked questions, where I was that night, why I went to her house, whether there had been contact before. I told him the truth, every word. He nodded slowly, wrote in his notebook, and said, "You understand how this looks, right? She was unstable, yes, but people are asking questions about your involvement." I could see it in his eyes, not accusation, just curiosity, the kind that follows authority like a shadow. When he left, my wife said quietly, "They're turning it on you now." I didn't respond, because in a way she wasn't wrong. Justice always finds a way to come back full circle. The department opened an internal inquiry, just to clear the record. And for the first time in my career, I felt what it was like to be on the other side of the table, to have my words doubted, my actions dissected. Why did you go to her house alone? Did you have any reason to believe she might harm herself? Did you intend to confront her as an officer or as a civilian? Every question was measured. Every answer, a reminder that I was no longer the one holding the pen. After the session, I sat in my car for a long time. The sun was setting, orange light spilling across the dashboard. I looked at my reflection in the mirror and barely recognized the man staring back. The man who once believed that doing the right thing always meant doing the lawful thing. That evening, I came home to find drawing in the living room. She was sketching something, a garden, I think, a little gate with flowers, a house behind it. When she saw me, she smiled faintly. "Look, Baba, it's our home, but I made the gate taller so no one can come in." I swallowed hard. "That's beautiful." She kept drawing for a moment, then asked softly, "Is the lady gone now?" I nodded. "Yes, she's gone." She was quiet for a while, then she said something that stayed with me forever. Maybe she was sad inside, that's why she hurt people. Her words were small, but they cut deeper than anything the inquiry ever could. That night I went for a walk, just me and the sound of gravel under my boots. The neighborhood looked different now. The air smelled of rain, the streetlights flickered in their usual lazy rhythm. But the faces that once looked away when I passed, now they nodded. Some even smiled. "Good job, Commissioner. You did what had to be done. Justice served." But their words didn't sound like victory. They sounded like echoes, hollow, fading before they even reached me. Because the truth is, there's no real victory when both sides lose something human. A few days later, I got a letter, no return address again, but this time it wasn't a threat. Inside was a folded photograph. Karen, years younger, standing with her kids in front of the same HOA sign that once bore her name. On the back, written in the same uneven handwriting I'd seen before, was one line. She wasn't always like this. I don't know who sent it. Maybe her husband. Maybe one of her old neighbors. Maybe just fate playing its cruel little reminder. I kept that photo, not because I forgave her, but because I needed to remember that monsters aren't born in houses like hers. They're made by pride, loneliness, and a world that forgets to notice when someone starts falling apart. A week later, the inquiry cleared me. No misconduct, no fault. Acted in personal capacity. The department moved on. But I didn't. Because justice, once it's personal, never really leaves you clean. Sometimes I still dream about that night. The headlights, the fire, the words painted on the fence. This isn't over. In some strange way, I think she was right. It wasn't over. Not really. Because when people break each other in the name of righteousness, the story never ends with punishment. It ends with memory, and memory never fades. It's strange how time softens even the sharpest edges of memory. It's been 6 months since that night. The gate has been rebuilt, the fence repainted, and the grass has grown over the ashes. From the outside, everything looks normal. But normal is a fragile thing. It doesn't erase what happened, it just grows around it. Walks without her crutch now. Her steps are slow, careful, and uneven, but they're hers, every one of them. She never complains, never blames. She just lives as if she's teaching me how to start again. Sometimes I watch her from the porch in the evenings, when the light turns golden and the wind carries that soft suburban hum. She'll wave at the neighbors, even the ones who once avoided us. And for a second, I think maybe she's stronger than anyone who ever tried to hurt her. A few weeks ago, I got a letter from the HOA. A new president, new members, same tone. They were deeply sorry for the events that transpired and wanted to restore community harmony. They even asked if I'd attend their next meeting, as a gesture of goodwill. I read the letter twice, then I folded it neatly and placed it in a drawer I never open. Some bridges aren't meant to be rebuilt. Not because of anger, but because some parts of the past belong exactly where they fell. That Sunday, I drove out of town. No destination at first, just the open road, a quiet car, and thoughts that refused to sit still. But somewhere along the way, I found myself turning down a narrow lane lined with cypress trees. The kind of place you don't plan to visit, but end up at anyway, as if pulled by something you still owe. The cemetery was small, almost hidden between the trees. I walked until I found her name. Hoakaren. The stone was simple. No flowers, just her name, the dates, and a short line. She tried to make things right. I stood there for a long time. The air was still. The world felt heavy. I didn't bring flowers, just truth. I don't know if you can hear this, I said quietly, but I never wanted it to end this way. My voice wavered. I wanted you to face justice, not disappear under it. A bird landed nearby, pecking the grass. Somewhere behind me, a rattled faintly. I don't forgive what you did, I continued. But I understand something now. You weren't born cruel. You just forgot how to be kind. I took a deep breath, looking at the small cracks forming along the edge of her name. Maybe I did too. When I left, I felt lighter, not free, but lighter. Because forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It means choosing not to carry someone else's mistakes any further. That night when I came home, was sitting on the porch swing. She looked up, smiled. Where were you, Baba? I smiled back, saying goodbye. She nodded like she understood. Maybe she did. The crickets hummed in the garden, the soft glow of the streetlights spilling over the pavement. For the first time in a long while, the neighborhood felt quiet, not tense, not watchful, just peaceful. I sat beside her. We didn't talk for a while. The air smelled faintly of rain. Then she said, almost in a whisper, "You look tired." I laughed softly, a little, but it's a good kind of tired. She leaned her head against my arm. That means you can rest now. I looked at her, the daughter I almost lost, the strength I didn't know I needed, and nodded. Yeah, maybe I can. And in that small moment, with nothing left to fight, nothing left to prove, I realized something I'd been running from all along. Justice isn't about who wins. It's about who heals. It's about learning that sometimes the loudest victories happen in silence. When you choose compassion over revenge, peace over pride, and love over the need to be right. As the night deepened and the world around us turned quiet, I closed my eyes and let it all go, the anger, the guilt, the noise. And for the first time in months, I slept without dreams. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe and join us for the next mystery on HOA Hunter Stories.